Welcome to the Coffee Journeys show, hosted by me, Piotr Zagorowski, author of the Coffee Journeys blog. In this show, I'll be sharing my journey from being a technical person to a leader and discussing topics such as leadership, technology, and intentional living. I'll be sharing my unique perspective and insights and offering guidance on how to develop the skills and mindset needed to succeed in today's world. Whether you're an aspiring leader, a technology enthusiast, or simply looking to learn more about the world around you, this podcast is for you. So, join me for the engaging and thought-provoking conversations on leadership, technology, and intentional living on the Coffee Journeys show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals. This is Piotr Zagorowski, your host. You probably heard in intro, I'm author of the Coffee Journeys blog, and now I'm recording a special episode number 0 of my new podcast, the Coffee Journeys show. Why I'm recording it? There are two reasons. One, it's obvious. It's a trailer. It's episode number 0, where I'm going to share a little bit about myself and a little bit about what I'm going to be recording about. But the second reason is pragmatic, and that's also connects to the way I'm going to run this podcast or record this podcast. I'm going to share a lot of practical tips. This is not my first podcast. I recorded or started podcasting in 2016, I would say, maybe 15. In Polish, it was companion podcast to my Polish blog. It started as parenting podcast and blog, and then it evolved to be kind of leadership / parenting. I see a big overlap actually between parenting and leadership. I'll be talking about this a lot. But at some point, I focused on English part of my life, I would say. I was born and grew up in Poland. Then in 2005, we moved to UK, to Britain. And we obviously speak Polish at home, but I work in English company and I speak English. So I need to develop English a lot. At some point, I was promoted to senior role, and I am a bullet point guy. So I can write everything in 3 to 5 bullet points, but it's not enough. I decided, okay, let's start writing a lot, and let's start be better in writing. So how you become better at writing. I decided, okay, I need to commit to write at least 1 blog post per week. So I set up my new blog, Coffee Journeys blog, where I started writing about everything. And, first blog posts were very, simple, I would say. It was just to start something. But then I attended some courses, very good courses on how to write. And I want to believe, I become better. And some magic happened actually, because it's not only about writing, it's about how you speak, it's about how you think. It's basically making yourself to write, structurize your thought process as well. I'll be sharing more throughout the course of this podcast, but now I'm just trying to explain what happened and what's going to be happening here. Pragmatic reason for this podcast. I digress. It's not my first podcast. I made tons of mistakes in the past. I'll give you a hint, like my first podcast wasn't even a podcast. I was just recording, putting MP3 in my blog and sharing links. So there was no feed. There was no Apple podcast. There was nothing to share with people so that people can find me. Stuff like this. One of the things that also takes place when you start new podcasts is that there are some technicalities. There's a long list of things that you need to complete, and it happens sometimes very quickly, few days, sometimes it could be 2 to 3 weeks. So by having this episode number 0, you just apply to have new podcasts in Apple Podcasts. You register everything, you record everything, and you wait. When it's ready, you can just smoothly add new episodes, and it's just delivered thanks to magic of automation and the fact that you did this work in the beginning. So that's one reason. And okay, now what I'm going to be recording about. I was thinking about this a lot because I already mentioned I started my blog and I started writing about everything. But recently I made some effort to structurize it, to categorize these posts and start thinking about this podcast, like what this is going to be about and how I'm going to be a little bit more structured. So I made first effort to categorize, and it was probably 7 to 8 categories, which is a lot still. But then I started to thinking through the lens of my career as well, because last year I changed a job. So it was good excuse to start thinking about a little bit about myself as well, like what I achieved, where I want to be, where I am, and so on, so on. It sounds philosophically, but it's true. Like sometimes we need to ponder on what we are doing, what we are optimizing for. So, long story short, I came up with 3 pillars that are going to be 3 pillars for this podcast and also for my blog. So, one is technology, the other one is leadership, and the third one is intentional life, as you probably heard in intro. So, why is that? I've been in technology forever, if I can remember. I started even with my own company when I was like assembling PCs long time ago. That I started to be interested in Linux. Then I migrated to be a network engineer, and I like technology. I surround myself by technology. I'm a big fan of Apple ecosystem. I'll be sharing a lot of small practical tips how to automate things and so on. Technology is a big part of my life. That's why it's one of the pillars of this podcast and my blog. The second one is leadership. Leadership is something that I would say discovered, or I started to be interested a few years ago. It coincided with the fact that I became a parent, and also I decided to step up and become a manager. So after a long time of focusing on technology, being network engineer, I become tech lead, team lead, and finally manager. And I made a ton of mistakes. As usual, I'm going to share a lot of them. I'm going to share what I did to overcome these problems. But basically, it turns out that when you change from being technical person to a leader, you just change your job effectively. You need to learn. You are still junior in leadership, even though you consider yourself quite senior from technological standpoint. It's a hard transition. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to help yourself, and I'm going to share about this as well. Human psychology is a fascinating topic. I'm going to share a lot about this. And finally, third pillar is intentional life. And again, when I thought about it, I thought about it holistically, I would say. There were periods of time when I focused on technology and leadership and work in general. I was optimizing for work. I wanted to become an expert. I wanted to become a specialist in one field, which was network engineering and Linux and systems and so on. And that was fine. I had time. I didn't have kids. I optimized for becoming an expert in one field. However, when kids arrived and I started thinking about this, you just want to find a balance, but it's a scale. It's a scale. It's not like you find it once and forever. So you have to be intentional about how you spend your time. That's why I call it intentional life. What does it mean? It means that there are some weeks where I spend a lot of time at work, and there are some weeks that I optimize to be with my family. I try to plan a lot of travels. I think travel is like a meta skill, and I'll be talking about this a lot. That's why my podcast is called Coffee Journeys. Journeys implies that we travel. Going back to intentional life, it also means automating a lot. I still want to do a lot at work and on my pet projects like this podcast and blog, and I automate a lot. And I give you an example. Like recently, I found some very, very good course on how to automate your newsletter. So I went through this course and now my newsletter is fully automated. What does it mean? I just need to type a text in some sections. Robots, my assistants, digital assistants take this text, put it together, form in a beautifully formatted email and send it. And then it takes some part of it and put in social media and so on and so on. And I want to also share a lot of this because I think it makes sense and it may inspire you to do similar things. Okay. Let's wrap up here. I'm going to actually share one quote by David Viscott that is kind of essence of what I've been trying to share in this very, very first episode. The quote goes like this. The purpose of life is to discover your gift. The work of life is to develop it. The meaning of life is to give your gift away. Again, very good quote from David Viscott. And on this topic, I'm going to wrap up here. You can expect, obviously, regular episodes in some time. I'm still working on it. I'm automating it, and I'll be sharing a lot of this with you in coming episodes. Thanks for your time today. I hope we meet again very soon. And this is all I have for you today. I value feedback a lot. That's why I ask you to review my podcast in your favorite podcasting platform and give it as many stars as you think it deserves. By doing so, this podcast is going to be more visible and I can reach more people to provide value. And before you go, if you would like to join the community of people who are determined to help each other and grow together, join my newsletter at coffeejourneys.blog/newsletter. Thanks for tuning in today, and until next time, have a great